So I actually figured out what I got going on with these three pools of money. This whole situation where I was taking a look at it and I was like, this does not make sense. Because if I go and I sell 5 cattle, there is zero way that I make $15,000 a month. It has to be substantially more than that. It doesn't make sense for me to make $15,000 a month if when I sell 5 cattle, just the check that I have in my hand is going to be about $12,000 or $14,000. There is zero way for me to make only 5,000, or for me to only make $15,000. It's not logically possible. It is not possible, right? It has to be substantially more. I've only sold 5 out of my 35 cattle, and I'm sitting there with $12,000, $14,000 in my hand. And so I figured it out. And the way that I figured it out, and the most reasonable, simple way for me to put it, the most reasonable way for me to put it is to, instead of thinking about one coin as $1,000, think about 1 cent as one animal. And this will make a lot more sense, because the whole thing about an investment is that the investment is worth money, right? This is the big idea. Investments are, the whole thing about having an equitable asset is that the asset is worth money. Okay, the thing that you bought with the money, whatever it is that you bought, you could buy the S&P 500, you could buy an apartment building, you could buy whatever. Granted that you have some way of determining the reasonable value of this asset. That asset is worth money, right? This is the whole idea of holding on to equitable assets, because the equitable asset is worth money. All right, you're not just making the monthly money, you're not just making the monthly cash flow, but you also are holding on to the asset, which is worth money itself. And so instead of thinking about 1 cent as $1,000, think about 1 cent as one animal. So here is pool number 1. And this is the most reasonable way for me to put it. This is actually, this is how I logically deduced it. This is a more accurate way, because I sat there and I thought about it and I was like, there is no way that I only make 15 grand. It's not, fundamentally, it is impossible. Because if I go and I sell my 5 biggest animal, just that alone, the 5 animals, just that alone will be worth, just that alone will put a $12,000 or $14,000 check in my hand. How is that possible? I make substantially more than 15,000. It has to be. All right, because I still have my other 30 animals, okay? And this is a very easy way to look at it. So I got 2 face-up dimes over here. I got a face-down dime over here, and I have a face-down nickel over here. I actually do have positive equity right now. I don't know where I messed up so badly on the, and I took a look at it. I am actually sitting on positive equity, okay? I'm not concerned about it. I think my positive equity is somewhere around 20 or 30,000, something like that. My positive equity, when it's all said and done, the whole thing about it is that I liquidate my animals at 800 pounds. And when I go through this, I'm not going to go and find my smallest animal out of my preconditioning pen and sell that animal. Why would I do that, right? I sell my animals at 800-900 pounds. And when I sell them at 800-900 pounds, I effectively get commodity value for them, right? And so, granted that I did my part and I bought the right type of animal and I raised them properly, etc., etc. I am actually sitting on positive equity right now. And so, but I'll go through the whole, so instead, I'll go through the whole shebang. So instead of thinking about 1 cent as $1,000, think about 1 cent as one animal. So over here, I got 2 face-up dimes, okay? I got 2 face-up dimes, and then I have a face-down dime, and I have a face-down nickel, okay? So this is pool number 1. This is my 35 animals, 10, 20, 30, 35, right? These 2 dimes are mine. This face-down dime is the bank's. This face-down nickel is the bank's. And over here are how I invested this. This is how the cattle are split up, okay? So I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 animals, okay? So all those face-up nickels are just this, but spread out over here, okay? And so, well, technically, if it's just 15, I guess, three of these got to be face down. And this is also what I mean by the amount of money that I make is drastic. It's way higher than 15,000. Okay, like I don't know exactly how much money I make, but it's a lot. And I'll go through this. So technically, these three need to be face down to be a representation of this dime and this nickel face down. This is 35 animals. 35 cents is 35 animals. And these nickels that I have here, these 7 nickels, are just these cattle, but shown. This is pool number 2, and this is pool number 3 over here. And I'll go through this. And this is a very realistic way. This is a more realistic way of looking at it. And this is also where I kind of I don't know what went wrong, but me and numbers. Me and numbers. I don't. My whole thing about dealing with numbers is if I turn it into a logic problem, that's my solution. I don't know what happened with me and numbers, but I am not a math person at all. I don't know where I failed. Me when I went to school, and now that I actually thought about this, but me when I went to school, one of my biggest problems was that I failed my math classes, and I did very poorly in math. I effectively could not do anything past algebra. I had a real hard time doing anything past algebra, and I think that that's also one of the reasons why I struggled so badly in school. I failed my math classes repeatedly, even when I went to tutoring after school and everything, and I still ended up failing my math classes, and it was a real difficult time for me with the math courses. And but I don't know what went wrong when I used 1 cent as $1,000, but but here as a representation of this is that 1 cent is one animal. All right, 1 cent is one animal, and so these 7 nickels on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is pool number 2, and this is pool number 3, okay? And this is pool number 1. But these 7 nickels in pool number 2 and pool number 3 is this 35 cattle is just represented for what they are right now. So this would represent the 200-pound animals, okay? This would represent 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and 800, okay? And so when I have a 200-pound animal, let's say I bring them home at about 200, 250, something like that, okay? Let's say I bring them home at about 250, 225. I bring them home at about 200. Excuse me. Whatever it may be. I bring them home at 200, 225, 250, something like that. By the next month, these 5 animals will have put on about 1 animal worth of gains. So if I sold the 300-pound cattle, if I sold 5 300-pound cattle, that would be a 5. If I have 5 200-pound cattle, and I raised them for 1 month, and let's say that they went from a 225 to 300. Okay, let's say they went from 225 to 300. But, let's just, to make things easy, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and 800. Because if it comes down to it, if I need to hold on to the animals for 1 more month to get them to 800, it's not going to fudge up the numbers so badly that it doesn't make sense. So let's just say that they put on 100 pounds, okay? And when the 5 animals put on 100 pounds, that is 500 pounds of net gain, right? That is 500 pounds of net gain, 100 pounds per animal. That 500 pounds of net gain will make me enough money to purchase. If I sold these 5 animals, I could actually purchase 6. And the reason that all of the pennies are face up is because that's my money. Granted that I don't leverage against this, and this is also what I mean by I need to leverage against this money. And this is also an easier way to represent what I mean by right now the pool number 2, the unrealized gain of pool number 2 is becoming drastic. When it was a smaller sum of money, these face-up pennies over here, there weren't very many of them, and it was more or less about that over there. But right now, you can see that there are, the number of pennies, and I will demonstrate this further. And so 1 month later, If I sold these 5 cattle, I could actually buy 6. 1 month later, if I sold these 5 cattle, these 400-pound cattle, if I sold the 5 of them, I could actually buy 7. So these are 500 pounders. If I sold these 500 pounders, I could actually buy 8. I could actually buy 8 small ones. Okay, I could actually buy 8 200 pounders, 600 pounders, 700 pounders, and 800 pounders. Okay, and so that's a representation. Instead of using the coins to, instead of using the money to represent dollars, the money is now representing cattle. And remember, cattle, granted that I purchased the right type of animal at roughly the right price, at commodity valuations, commodity type cattle at commodity type prices, then I'm effectively just trading the money. The money is equally as valuable as the money, or the cattle are in monetarily, more or less the same thing. Okay, in terms of a monetary value. Okay, and so this right here, all of the coins are face up, right? All of the pennies are face up, and that is my money. And so this is pool number 2. Okay, these are all the animals that I have, and this is the animals. These are the animals. This is pool number 3, and these are the animals that I would be selling, right? And you have to remember that when I sell animals, this is a very good way to look at it, because these animals may make me $2,650 a piece or something like that. I may make $2,700 a piece, whatever it may be, $2,700 a piece. I may make $2,700 per animal, but it did not cost me $2,700 to make that $2,700. Maybe it cost me $1,500, and so I still have $1,200 left over, right? And so if I still have $1,200 left over, that $1,200 will buy me another animal, right? There is a profit margin. I make money, right? If I sell my cattle and I make $2,700 per animal, it did not cost me $2,700 to make that $2,700. There is a profit margin, right? And so this money over here, so these would be the animals that I have left, the 30 animals that I have left. I started off with 35, right? I started off with 35, and now I have these animals that are going to the market. And so when I sell these 5 animals, I actually end up with enough money to buy 11. Right? I actually end up making enough money to buy 11. And so in this situation, right, I would take this money over here and if I'm, for whatever reason, my mind just switched back into math mode, and I'm gonna keep this as cattle mode. I'm just gonna keep this as cattle. So if I sold 5 cattle and I made enough money to buy 11 small ones, then what does that do to the overall pools of money? Where does this money go? This money would go, if I took this money, it would all go over here, right? It would all go over here into pool number 1. Right? Because so let's turn it into a logic thing. So I had this check in my hand, and I took that check in my hand and I bought a bunch of cattle with it. So that's what I did. So now I put 11. So now I put 11 over here, right? But if I put 11 over here, but what would I do with that money then? So I had the check in my hand. I put all of the money over here, because that would be me buying more cattle. And now so now what would I do with the money, right? Well, then I would end up with 11 cattle over here, right? I wouldn't have 5 over here anymore. I wouldn't have 5 here anymore. I would have 11, right? So that makes sense. So I had a check in my hand. I took that check. I invested it. That would move it over here. And so, oh yeah, but that's the thing is that this. Okay, so that's the thing, that this over here and this over here, pool number 1 and pool number 2 are the exact same thing. They are the exact same thing. It's just a different way to this is just this broken down. So this right here would instead of 5, this would actually now turn into 11. So, but that's what's happening. So this pool of money, this pool number 2 is the exact same value as pool number 1. It's just pool number 1 broken up into what the cattle are actually worth, or in terms of a monetary value, right? The number of cattle that I have, and etc., etc. So now I would have 11 cattle here, right? And now when you take a look at it, I may still only be making, I may still only be making, I would have to put 6 pennies over here. So I may still only be making, 11 cattle worth of money. I may still only be making 11 cattle worth of money, but I have all of this positive equity sitting here, right? Pool number 1 is just to keep track of how much debt I have. That's actually a reasonable thing to look at. Pool number 1 is effectively just a way for me to keep track of how much, give me a rough idea of how much leverage or how much equity, how much of my own money have I dumped into the asset. That's all pool number 1 is. Pool number 1 is just to keep track of how much money did I dump into the asset and how much leverage do I have against it. Pool number 2, and this is also what I mean by pool number 2, is actually going to become one. It will probably become my largest source of money, because when I have this, right, and I'm taking a look at pool number 1 and I say, well, I still only have 15 animals worth of leverage, and I have 10, 20, 25, 30, 31 animals worth of my own money, and I only have 15. That's less than 50% leverage. And this is also what I mean by this is where I'm effectively going to end up next month. I will be under 50% leverage next month. This is a look at my balance sheet right now, right? 5 animals effectively going to market, once a month at 800 pounds. And so when I take a look at this and I say, well, when I take a look at this, I have less than 50% leverage. And then I take a look at this and I realize that I got, this is what this is what it looks like when it's all in thorough detail. This is what it actually looks like. This is just a rough screenshot of. This is more or less just to give me an idea of how much money did I put into the deal. This is just that's actually more it is. I'm actually going to stop using this pool of money to determine how much leverage I have. Up until now, I've more or less used this pool of money to determine how much leverage I have, but I'm going to stop doing that. That's actually a good point. So this is more or less just to give me an idea of how much money I have in the deal. Okay, if the feeder cattle price drops by 30%, and and then I would need to reevaluate this. I would need to keep track of this to see how much money I have in the deal. That's my money, okay? But in terms of determining how much leverage I have, I would want to use this. And if the price of feeder cattle suddenly, but the whole thing about feeder cattle going down is that I'm not concerned about it, because I am effectively set to be a cattleman forever, okay? I don't grow corn, I don't grow soybeans, I don't do anything else. I am a cattleman forever, okay? That is my farming obligation. That is what I do, okay? And so when I take a look at this now, I may still only be making 11 animals worth of money, but I have this sitting here, right? And in the next month, this would get moved over here. and I would end up with another dime and another penny over here, right? So I would end up with another dime and another penny over here, but this would be moved over here. And if I, instead of having a nickel, I have a dime and a nickel, then this would be making a little bit more than 2 pennies. This would be doubling what I make over here, right? And then when this gets moved over here the next month, when the animals have gotten bigger, they would have produced another 2 pennies, right? And then when this gets moved over here, and so forth, right? And this over here there would be another set of animals over here, and then there would be another set of animals. There would be another set of animals over here, right? And then there would be another set of animals. It would continuously, and then 7 months later, the money would show up as a check in my hand, right? But until that money shows up as a check in my hand, it is just sitting here in pool number 2. And this is also what I mean by pool number 2 is going to be a drastic source of money for me. And this is also why I need to reasonably leverage against pool number 2. I do need to leverage against pool number 2, because the next month, these 200-pound cattle would be 300 pounds. And they'd be over here, right? And if they moved over here and I had 11 animals put on 100 pounds apiece, that would effectively buy me 2 more cattle, right? And if they moved over here, then now they're 400 pounds. Well, these animals, if I sold these 11 animals, they would actually produce me enough money to buy 15, right? And so forth, and so on and so forth. And this money would get moved over here, right? And so pool number 2 is becoming a drastic source of money for me. And so, granted that I sell them at 800 pounds, if I sell them at 800 pounds and I hold on to the money, or not if I hold on to the money, if I sell them at 800 pounds, granted that, I sell them at 800 pounds. If I do that, I'm already sitting on positive equity. As of today, granted that I sell my animals at 800 pounds and the feeder cattle market more or less goes sideways. But even if the cattle price goes down, I've spoken about this. I'm not leveraged to the eyeballs. I'm not concerned about it. Even if the cattle price does go down, it doesn't matter to me because they all go down at the same time. All right. Feeder cattle don't, there are small nuances in the market, but effectively all the cattle move up and down at the same time. All right. You're not going to ever go to the sale barn and it just be a normal thing for you to buy 800-pound animals for less than 500-pound animals. You're just not going to do that. Okay. Granted that the animals are of similar quality. If you go to the sale barn and you find number 1 type animals and they're 800 pounds and you find number 1 type animals and they're 500 pounds, you can almost be, it's effectively always and forever. All right. Unless, I don't know, we get hit by some black hole or something, the 800-pound number 1 type commodity animal will be worth more than a 500-pound number 1 type commodity animal. OK, that's effectively just how it works. All right. Would it make sense for you to go and buy 1 kilogram of gold? Would it make sense? And if it happened, then I would go and buy, think about this. Would it make sense for 1 kilogram bars of gold to be worth less than a half a kilogram bar of gold? Would that make sense? It wouldn't, right? And I've talked about this, the whole thing about cattle and gold are in the same sector of the economy. Okay, it doesn't make sense for number 1 type 800-pound animals to be worth less than 500-pound animals. All right, it doesn't make sense. And so this is also what I mean by pool number 2 is becoming a drastic source of money for me. And this is also something that I wanted to talk about today. I was going to talk about today. I'm actually, and a couple of things I'm going to talk about in terms of a future outlook. I'm actually positioning myself to give up my day job. I am now going to position myself to give up my day job, and the way that I'm going to do it, because let's say I got 11 over here, right? And then when it goes over here, it's a 13, 15, 17. And 19, right? 19. So let's just say, it's whatever, but by the time this money gets over here, right? Right now it's 11, it goes 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, right? By the time it gets over here, you have to understand that over here, there will be a 19, over here, there will be a 17, a 15, a 13, and an 11, all right? And then, when this is 21 and this goes over here, this will no longer be 11, it will be 21, right? And so there's going to be a lot of money being slammed down the pipeline. A lot of money. Like this is also what I've been talking about over the next 3 months. The amount of money that I'm making is set to go absolutely astronomical. And so the big idea is when this money gets over here, and I've already been talking about the I will probably end up with a pool number 4, and it will be very difficult for me to invest this sum of money, because if I have to invest, let's say I have a check in my hand for 21 animals, and then I have another check. I have another set of animals over here that are worth 19 animals, and then I have another set of animals over here worth 17 animals, and I have another one 15 and 13, and I want to leverage against 80% of it. I would have to leverage against the 21 animals. I would have to leverage against the 19, the 17, and probably the 15. All right, like I would have to go and buy like a lot of cattle. I would have to buy like 200 cattle very quickly, okay? And this is effectively what is set to happen. This will happen next month. Right now, it may not be this. It may be a nickel over here right now. It may be a nickel over here right now. But next month, when I sell these animals, I have 5 animals ready to go. And when I sell those 5 animals, I will make enough money to buy 11. And that's what this is. I'm effectively 2 weeks away from this happening. And once this starts to happen, the amount of money that I have will go absolutely ballistic. This is what I'm talking about. The amount of money that I have will go absolutely ballistic. And so, and I feel like this may be something interesting to talk about. I am positioning myself to give up my day job, okay? I am positioning myself to give up my day job. And I figured that the way that I would do it is, the whole idea of pool number 4. Pool number 4 is effectively the money that I just have sitting there, okay? It's money that I have, and, it's the money that I can utilize, and it's the money that I can utilize and not be concerned about it. And so I'll actually demonstrate pool number 4 right now. So pool number 4, what I will do with pool number 4 is that so this will be pool number 4. I'll actually demonstrate pool number 4. Pool number 4 is going to be, let's just say let's just say it's going to be about, realistically, I really want to do, maybe about 75 grand. Okay. And what I'm going to do is actually, it doesn't matter how much money it is, because it's just a demonstration, 50, 100 grand, something, 75 grand, 100, something like that. And so if I have this money over here, and let's say that what I'm looking to do is, or not what I'm ultimately, and I've already said that the thing about me fiddle farting around with the pools of money is that I'm not going to fiddle fart around with the pools of money. I'm just going to let them form, and once they are formed, I will figure out what I need to do. I'm not going to fiddle fart around with the money. So when I ultimately, and this is what I mean, when I ultimately end up in a situation where I have 2 quarters over here, and I am looking to, and I'm still like just slam filled, and I'm still just having a difficult time reinvesting my money. I may realistically need to like invest in, like, once this starts happening, it may be like 100 cattle, okay, 200 cattle, very quickly. All right, this will get bonkers very fast. And so when I end up in a situation where I have 2 face-up quarters over here, instead of putting this money back in over here, I will put this money over here in pool number 4. And instead of dumping the money back into over here, I will take a loan for that amount. And so this will let me utilize this money. This will help me add more debt to the balance sheet. And I will only do this when the amount of debt that I take, does not increase the overall debt on my portfolio. And I will only do this if when me doing this does not negatively affect my business. All right, my business is still my top priority. God is my number 1 priority. And then after that, it's business. I'm not going to do this intentionally and like slow down my business. My business will need to be running absolutely full steam. I will need to be in a situation where I have so much money that I don't know, that I can't invest all of it, and it's still coming in, right? When that is happening, which I would reasonably anticipate will take about 3 months. This is what my balance sheet is going to look like next month. And within 3 months, this will be 1, 2, 3. This will be over here, and this will realistically be, have another six pennies on it, and then I'll have another dime and a penny over here, and I'll have another 4 on it, and then I'll have another dime and a penny over here, and I'll have 2 on it, right? And so, realistically, once that happens, I will reasonably anticipate that I effectively just have such a large amount of money that I cannot, even if I tried, I would not be able to invest all of it. It will, at that point, I will not negatively, I'm not going to make my business go slower. I'm not going to slow down my business to do this. But when this happens, instead of putting this money over here, I will put it in pool number 4. I will put 2 quarters. I will invest, I will take a loan for this amount of money. I will take a loan for this amount of money, the 2 face down quarters, and then I will invest the debt. So I will invest the debt instead of investing the money. But realistically, I want to invest the debt and the money, right? This is what I would like to do. But if I did this, and let's say that these 4 quarters are producing me 2 dimes worth of, and then the next time it was another 2 dimes, right? And if I realistically just cannot keep up, like I'm having to buy like 250 cattle a month, and I'm like, there is legitimately no way that I'm gonna do this, right? It's not possible for me to do that. Then I will effectively I will pull the money out of my business, and I will hold on to the money, and then I will invest the debt. That's when I will do it. But I am not going to do this intentionally and damage my business. I'm not going to slow down my business to do this when I have so much money coming in that I am having a difficult time investing it. I just legitimately cannot invest it, even if I tried. It's such a large amount of money. That is when I will do this. And this will be the money that I hold on to, and this will be effectively my this pool of money over here, number 4, will effectively just be the cash that I have in my bank account. Whatever the sum may be, right? Just, whatever the sum may be, this will just be the cash that I have in my bank account. And, this, if I do this, it's going to get out of hand very quickly. I mean, we're talking about like potentially like 6-figure sums of money very rapidly. All right. So realistically, I will want to use this to purchase something like a piece of land or something, a house, something like that, something, another asset. Okay. And if I purchase something like a house with this money, I can always take a loan against this money again and utilize like 80% of it if I legitimately needed access to this money. But the whole thing about me having this money is that the business that I am running is making so much money that I cannot invest it. So I invest leverage and I hold on to the cash. That's the only time that I would do this. And I would not do this if it meant it was going to slow down my business or damage my business. And so here's the thing. And, and I've been talking about like me doing this. I would reasonably anticipate that within 3 months, I may need to have to invest something like $150,000 to $200,000 a month. All right. That's a very, somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 a month, something like that. I will have to invest a very large sum of money. Okay. And this is going to take some serious elbow grease. And I've been talking about this. Like, I may legitimately need to like have people build barns. I may need to have people that drill wells. I may need to have people that fix fences. I may need to have people that fly drones. I may need to have people that give animals medication. I may need to have people that haul animals. And I may need to be myself going out and, and working on my animals, growing grass, things like that as well. Buying land, changing out equipment. This is going to take some serious elbow grease. This is what my balance sheet is going to look like, minus the 4 quarters. I mean, if I had 4 quarters over here, that'd be very nice. But I'm going to have 4 quarters over here very soon. Okay, that's the big idea. I'm going to have a large amount of money very soon, and it's going to compound. I may not have the check in my hand, but I will have the money sitting here in pool number 2. And this pool number 2 is substantially larger than pool number 3. Substantially larger. And technically pool number 2 and pool number 1 are the well, pool number 2 is actually technically larger than pool number 1 as well. Pool number 2 is actually becoming my largest source of money, right? Because this money over here, it's going to become my largest source of money. Pool number 2 will be my largest source of money. Oh, actually, technically it won't be, because pool number 3 would be the last set of animals would be separated and then taken to the market. So pool number 1 and pool number 2, pool number 2 is a significantly larger source of money than pool number 3. Significantly larger. And this is an easy way to see it. And the whole thing about this, this is gonna, this is realistically what my balance sheet is about to look like in 1 month. When, granted that I don't start doing drugs, or I don't, go and buy 5 Lamborghinis or get myself 5 girlfriends or something like that. Granted that I don't do that between, here and here and here. Granted that I don't do that, and I actually just go and do this, right? And I just keep raising my cattle. And I've already given my whole thing about raising cattle and farming and making money. And, and if I want to buy it, I just buy it. I don't even have to think about it. It's a waste of time for me to even think about buying anything. Granted that I'm not going to go and buy drugs or buy 5 Lamborghinis. I can already buy it and it doesn't even matter, okay? I can effectively buy anything. I think about it as a waste of time for me to even think about it. Okay, I just buy it, okay? It doesn't matter to me. Granted that I'm not going to be buying drugs. Granted that I don't, buy 5 Lamborghinis or whatever, Granted that I don't go and do something ridiculous. I can already buy it, okay? And so this is what my balance sheet will look like within about 2 or 3 weeks. This is what my balance sheet will look like. And within 3 months, I am telling you, it is going to be a large amount of money. And it will take some serious elbow grease for me to invest this sum of cattle. Or this sum of money. It will take some serious elbow grease. I will need to have people building barns, fixing fences, drilling wells, giving animal shots, hauling animals. I will need to, change out my equipment I will need to get myself a bigger truck, a bigger trailer, and I will have to, go and grow my grass. It's going to take some serious elbow grease. And even after that, I will still probably have money left over. And when that happens, I will take a look at how much money it is. And, I would reasonably anticipate that I get paid every single month. All right, that's how I set up my balance sheet right now. I am set to pay myself every single month. And it is going to be a substantial amount of money, and it's compounding. It's going to be a lot of money, and it's going to take some serious elbow grease. And, even when I do that, I probably still will not be able to invest all of the capital. And I have a reasonable idea for what I will do then. The money that I cannot invest, but it's sitting here, I will move that into pool number 4, take a loan. And but if I can invest all of it, I would rather invest all of it, because when I invest it, I can leverage against it. And at the end of the day, I have a credit card if it comes down to it. But I will probably end up with the pool number 4, okay?